That Christmas Eve, everything felt perfect. The warm atmosphere, the shimmering lights, the bright smiles on everyone's faces. But in that very moment, when Kate stood up in the middle of the table and saw that she would take control of the family's finances from now on, the air in the room suddenly shifted. Something vague, almost impossible to explain, swept through the space like a cold draft slipping through a crack in the door. Everything seemed to pause, not because of the festive excitement, but because of a strange silence, a silence heavy with tension before an unexpected shock. All eyes turned toward Kate, and her words cut through the warmth of the family like a sharp blade. Max, my son, the one I had raised for so many years, did not even look at me once. He sat there in silence, like an unfeeling block of wood. I could sense the change in his attitude immediately. And Kate, my daughter-in-law, stood there like a queen in a kingdom she had painted for herself, perfect and powerful. She had decided that from now on, she would hold everything in her hands, from money to every decision in the family. "We're not just celebrating Christmas," Kate said, her voice gentle yet filled with confidence, as if she were addressing a large audience rather than close family. "We're welcoming a new chapter in our lives. With the baby on the way, Max and I have had serious conversations about responsibility, about stability in the family." Those words struck my mind like an unexpected blow. I could not help but feel a trembling tension rising in my chest. Kate had arranged everything. Everything she said sounded reasonable, from managing finances to the idea that I no longer needed to worry about money because I was too old. And Max, my son, the one I had devoted myself to raising and teaching for years, just sat there nodding, agreeing with every decision Kate made. He did not look at me. "I think it's a wise decision," someone at the table spoke up. "She's very organized." Around the table, everyone nodded in agreement. All attention seemed fixed on Kate, and a strange, unreadable look flickered in my eyes. But I did not want to create tension, not on this Christmas Eve. Still, a part of me could not remain indifferent. What Kate had just said made me feel like I had been pushed out of the game. Kate continued, her gaze turning toward me. There was no friendliness or concern in her eyes. She looked at me as if I were something to be controlled, something to be managed. "Evelyn," she said, using my name as if she were speaking to a stranger, "we canceled your credit cards this morning. It's the best decision for you. At your age, you shouldn't have to worry about money anymore." Her words felt like a heavy slap across my face. I looked into Max's eyes, but he did not look back, as if everything I had done for him no longer mattered. Kate's words pierced deeply into my heart, and I could feel the sharp ache within me. Yet I did not show it. I did not want to make a scene. I just sat there, looking at everyone, at the familiar faces I had shared years of my life with, now praising Kate's decision. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger rising inside me. But deep down, I could feel something shifting. It was not just Kate's control. It was the change in the way Max saw me. My son, the one I had sacrificed so much for, was now standing on that woman's side. The feeling of being abandoned was like a boat drifting helplessly in the vast ocean. But I knew that deep within, I was still the only one who could remain standing through this storm. With a calm gesture, I placed my glass on the table and stood up. Every step felt heavy, every joint aching with age, yet I walked with a straight and resolute posture. I looked directly into Max's eyes, my son, the one I had raised since he was just a child. "Max," I said softly, but each word carried the weight of an undeniable decision. "Do you really not know?" At that moment, the entire room fell completely silent. No one spoke, not a single sound could be heard. Kate frowned, confusion written across her face, unable to understand what I meant. Max lifted his head, his eyes filled with shock, as if struck by lightning. I did not answer right away. I did not need to explain anything to anyone. I only wanted Max to understand that in this world full of illusions, there are things that only time and silence can reveal. And I was already prepared for that. Max said nothing more. He just sat there, his eyes unfocused, his hands clenched together as if he were struggling with something deep inside. Kate, at that moment, seemed unaware of the shift in the atmosphere. She kept smiling, occasionally glancing at me as if to make sure I would not react. I could feel that look, cold and distant. She did not need me, because Max was there. Max, who had once been my pride, now seemed like a fading shadow, no longer the son I had carefully raised step by step. I sat back down in my seat, my eyes falling on the glass of wine I had left untouched on the table. I no longer felt like drinking. Throughout the dinner, I could hear laughter, but it all sounded like it was echoing from somewhere far away. The conversations around me, the laughter, had now become part of a picture I no longer belonged to. No one noticed how I felt. I did not speak, I did not resist. I just sat there in silence, watching everything like an audience member in the play of my own life. But then I remembered. I remembered the time when Max was still a child, the long sleepless nights when I struggled for every penny to raise him. I had nothing but love and the hope that one day I could give my son a better life. And now, when I thought I had done enough, given everything I could, he stood by this woman. Someone I had only met not long ago. Someone who, beneath her perfect appearance and sweet words, carried a calculation far more complex than it seemed. I could not let things continue like this, not because I was unwilling to yield, but because I knew this silence could become the most powerful weapon. Silence does not mean weakness. It is control, a kind of self-possession that no one can see. And at this moment, I needed Max and Kate to understand that. A few days later, I found myself recalling the difficult years of my life. When Leo passed away, I was left completely alone, no family, no close friends, just a small child and a mountain of debt pressing on my shoulders. No one helped me. No one could share that burden. I remember how I had to carry everything on my own, the long days and sleepless nights, repairing machines, earning every coin to raise my child. No one saw what I was doing. It was just me and Max, in a world where everything seemed to have been left behind. But I did not give up. I kept going, learning from my mistakes, persisting through the small opportunities life gave me. I began making money not only by repairing things, but also by buying old machines, fixing them, and renting them out. Quietly, I built an empire of my own with valuable assets and solid contracts. Step by step, I not only kept myself standing, but also created a better future for Max. He never knew about it, not once. I wanted him to grow up without looking at the money I made. I wanted him to understand that life is not just about money, but about hard work, perseverance, and self-respect. Even so, I knew I could not hide it forever, especially after Kate appeared, with her sweet words and confident manner as if she held everything in her hands. At first, I thought she was simply a successful woman who knew how to live and take care of her family. But gradually, the questions she asked, the way she guided Max, made me uneasy. She was not as simple as she appeared. She had ambition. And that ambition did not stop at helping Max. I felt as if I was being pushed to the sidelines, as though I was no longer an important part of my son's life. One day, I decided I would not remain silent anymore. I asked an acquaintance of mine to look into Kate's background, and the results were surprising. She was not who she claimed to be. She had a past filled with financial trouble, large debts she dared not face. She did not have the stability she always boasted about. It was all just a facade, a cover to hide fear and insecurity. I did not want to tell Max immediately. I knew he would not believe me, or worse, he might blame me for interfering in his life. But I could not let her continue deceiving him. I could not stand by and watch my son be misled by sweet words without seeing the truth behind them. More than anyone, I understood that life is not just about appearances. Everything must be built on sincerity, on values that cannot be seen right away. And I would make Kate realize that my silence was not weakness. It was resolve, a strength she could never take away. As time passed, I remained there, quiet in my familiar home. In recent days, nothing had been the same. Max had grown distant. He no longer called me like he used to, no longer checked on me every weekend. Our meetings became fewer and farther between, and when they did happen, he always seemed rushed, not truly present. Phrases like, "Mom, I'm really busy," or "Lauren is worried about you," had replaced the sincere questions I once waited for. It hurt me, not because I lacked affection, but because I could feel the change in him, a change I could not stop worrying about. Kate, the daughter-in-law I once thought would be part of the family, had now become like a shadow, quietly taking over Max's heart and mind. I am not someone who easily doubts, but Max's change left me uneasy. I have seen many things in life, Yet the silence of these past days troubled me the most. It was not the silence of peace, but the silence of something shifting beneath the surface, of relationships quietly eroding without anyone noticing. One evening, as I sat in my familiar, quiet room, the light from outside the window casting over the worn fabric chairs, I heard the doorbell ring. I stood up, a heavy feeling weighing on my chest. When I opened the door, I was not surprised to see Max standing there. But this time, he did not come with his usual smile. Instead, his face was tense, his eyes dark, as if he had gone through an internal battle I could not understand. "Mom, I need to talk to you for a bit," Max said, his voice dry, as though he had prepared himself for this moment. I invited him in, silently observing each of his steps. Max sat down in the chair across from me, not meeting my eyes like he used to. The tension in the air was so clear it made my chest ache. He stayed silent for a while, as if thinking about where to begin. Finally, he spoke. "Lauren said, you need to prepare for the future. You know, you're getting older, and you might not have the strength to handle everything anymore. She said we should make things clear, so nothing gets messy if something happens," Max said, his voice slightly trembling. I could not respond right away. His words felt like a gentle accusation, as if I were no longer capable of taking care of myself. A numb ache spread through me. Everything I had done for my son, all those long, exhausting nights, all those silent years of sacrifice, now seemed to be diminished like this. But I did not let my emotions take over. I simply sat there, looking at him without speaking. My heart was in turmoil, but I knew that if I spoke now, I would lose control. "Max, do you really think I can't take care of myself?" I asked, my voice calm but edged with bitterness. He remained silent. The next few moments stretched endlessly, as if the very space around us was holding its breath. Max lowered his head, then looked up again, his gaze uncertain, as though he did not know what to say. In the end, he only managed a hesitant sentence. "I just want you to be safe, you know. She cares about you a lot, and I just want everything to be clear." I did not answer immediately. I looked into his eyes, searching for something I could understand, but there was nothing. He was standing between a choice I could not make for him. It was his alone, and I could not force him to decide the way I wanted. But I could not let my silence become a tool that controlled him. I needed to show him that I was not weak, and I was not a mother waiting to be saved by her son. "You think she's worried about me, but in truth, she's worried about herself," I said softly, yet each word struck directly at a truth Max had not yet realized. Max turned his face away, as if my words were a betrayal. But I knew I was right. He did not see it yet, but I did. What Kate was doing was not out of love for Max, but out of a desire to control everything, to bring it all into her hands. Max said nothing more. He stood up, his hands stiff, clenched into fists. I watched him without speaking, letting him leave in silence. I knew that one day he would realize the truth, just as I once had when facing life's trials. But that was a journey he had to walk on his own, and I could not walk it for him. As Max stepped out the door, I stood there quietly, watching his figure fade away. Inside me, something was shifting. It was not defeat, but awakening. I had done everything I could to raise my son, to give him a good life. And whether he understood it or not, I would always remain a strong mother, never allowing myself to be diminished, never allowing silence to become weakness. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. After Max left the night before, I had not been able to sleep. That hollow feeling lingered inside me. I knew I could not just sit there and wait for others to change. No one could change the situation except me. I had learned that lesson over many years. Everything in life can change, except the principles I have built for myself. The helplessness of not being able to do anything for my son, the feeling of being left behind, all of it now felt like nothing more than lines etched onto the face of a woman who had lived through countless ups and downs. But I could not let myself drown in sadness. I had lived through difficult years, and I had overcome all of them. No one helped me when I became a widow, when I had no money, no support from family. Yet I survived, and I did more than just survive. I rebuilt my life from broken pieces with persistence and patience. So why should I stop now? Why should I accept fading into the background as someone who no longer holds value in her own child's eyes? In the past, I carried the responsibility of holding the family together, raising my son on my own. From repairing machines in industrial workshops to buying small assets and building an empire of my own, everything I did was by my own hands. I never asked for help, and I never wanted anyone to see me as weak. But as things began to change, when Kate entered Max's life, I saw the shift in my son. He no longer looked at me with love and respect. Kate, with her polished image and confident presence, had drawn Max into her world, and I, the mother who had given her entire life to him, was left as nothing more than a shadow in my own family. One morning, I decided to step outside and walk around the neighborhood. I had nothing left to lose, and I could not keep sitting in that house waiting for others to change. The houses along the street were the same, quiet and still. The winter cold made me feel more alert. The chill brushing against my skin reminded me of the hard days in the past, when I had walked through that same cold, not knowing what I would do to survive. But I had survived, and today I would not allow myself to become weak. I returned home and sat at my desk, reopening old documents, contracts, the assets I had accumulated over the years. I had never let Max know about these things because I wanted him to understand that life is not built on money alone, but on personal effort. But now I realized that my silence could no longer save anything. If I continued to stay silent, I would lose not only my son's respect, but also my own. I made my decision. It was time to speak the truth. Kate could not continue to control everything in this family. And Max, whether he liked it or not, had to understand that I was not a weak woman, not a mother in need of protection from her son. I had built everything on my own, and I had the right to keep it. The important decisions, the assets I had spent years building, no one had the right to control them except me. It was time to change the game. It was time for Kate and Max to understand that my silence was not weakness, but patience, and a kind of power they could not see. I did not need to prove anything. All I needed was for them to understand that the truth cannot be hidden forever. I had already prepared everything quietly. I began contacting my lawyer, the one who had helped me with legal matters before. I asked him to prepare all the necessary documents to protect my rights. I did not want to use money to control Max or Kate, but I needed to protect myself. The assets I had built, everything I had done in my life, were not things anyone could take without my consent. And then that day came. One afternoon, when Max and Kate came to visit, I was ready. I no longer felt uneasy or afraid. I sat across from them with complete calm. Kate had no idea that I had prepared a major shock, and I knew that once the truth was revealed, nothing would ever be the same again. Max, Kate, I began, my voice cold yet steady, it's time I told you something important. Everything you think belongs to me is not something you can control. I looked into Max's eyes, then turned to Kate. I've prepared everything. The assets, the investments, they are all mine, and I will not let anyone, no matter who they are, control them without my consent. Max's expression shifted instantly, and I realized he was beginning to understand. As for Kate, her confidence seemed to waver. But I said nothing more. I let them sit with the change in the air, because sometimes silence says everything. In the days that followed, I continued living in silence, but this silence was no longer the same as before. It was not endurance or surrender, but preparation, calculation for my next move. I knew Max and Kate would not understand immediately, but I also knew I could not let this shift happen without a clear ending. We all have the right to choose, but no one has the right to impose their will on someone else's life, especially when that person has spent an entire lifetime building what they have. Max, though he did not say it out loud, I knew he could feel the tension in the air. Every time I looked into my son's eyes, I saw uncertainty, as if he could not decide between holding on to Kate's protection and recognizing that I had done everything for him. He did not understand, but I did not blame him. I saw in his eyes a struggle, a hesitation I myself had once gone through in the past. Kate, however, was different. She appeared strong and confident, but I could see in her every action a worry she could not hide. My words that day had shaken her. I had not made any threats, but truth carries its own power. Kate, with all the control she believed she had gained, was now beginning to feel cracks in the world she had built. Everything seemed on the verge of collapse, and that was inevitable. I knew I could not prolong this tension forever. I decided it was time to make everything clear. One Sunday morning, when Max and Kate came to visit, I had everything prepared. I had spoken with my lawyer, arranged all the necessary documents to prove my ownership of everything I had accumulated over the years. I did not want to create conflict or hurt anyone, but I understood that if I did not act, everything would be lost in a silence I could no longer control. They arrived around noon, and the house remained quiet, as if nothing had changed. Max walked in first, his eyes tired, as though nothing was different. Kate followed behind, her face still carrying a gentle smile, but in her eyes I saw calculation. I said nothing, letting them sit down freely, but I knew the moment had come. Max, Kate, I began, my voice low and steady. I don't want to remain silent anymore. It's time for you to see that your decisions cannot be based on empty words. I built this life with my own hands, and no one has the right to take away what I have created. Both Max and Kate remained silent, but the tension in the air was so clear that I did not need to say more. I continued, my voice now even more resolute. Kate, I know you are concerned about controlling the family's finances, but you need to understand that I did not live my life just to hand everything over to someone else, no matter who it is. Max may be my son, but he also has to take responsibility for his own life, not live under someone else's protection forever. Kate maintained her composure, but I could see her beginning to falter. She glanced at Max, then looked back at me, as if searching for a way to argue. But I was ready for everything. I don't want conflict, but I want everything to be clear. Everything you think belongs to me, it is mine, and I will not let anyone, even my own son, take control of my life without my consent. I said firmly, my eyes fixed on Kate, making sure she understood every word. Max lowered his head, saying nothing. I knew he was in pain, trying to process everything, but I could not stop. I had to make things clear, not only for myself, but for my son, for the values I had taught him all these years. I will not let this silence make me weak. Yes, I have been silent for a long time, but not because I lack power. It was because I trusted you. But now, I have to show you that I am not as fragile as you think. Kate looked at me, her lips pressed tightly together, then turned to Max, her expression no longer as confident as before. I could see the confusion in her eyes. But I did not care. I had said everything I needed to say. We will not say anything more. I have done everything to protect this family, to make sure my son does not lose his own value. And if you think I can be easily manipulated, then you are wrong. Finally, Max spoke. He lifted his head, his eyes still clouded, but I could sense something different in the way he looked at me. Not pain, but awareness. He understood, at least in part, that what I was doing was not only to protect myself, but also him. I understand now, Mom, Max said, his voice softer, yet carrying a certainty I had never heard before. Kate said nothing more. She stood up, looked at me once, then turned and walked out without a word. Max followed, but before leaving, he looked at me again, as if searching for an explanation. I did not respond. I simply nodded. When they left, I sat down once again in my familiar chair. This time, there was no emptiness. I knew I had done the right thing. Difficult decisions will always be a challenge, but I had overcome it, and I believe that when everything settles, Max will understand. In the days after the confrontation, everything did not change immediately. Max and Kate still came to visit me, but the ease between us was gone. Max, though trying to remain composed, carried a strange look in his eyes, a subtle yet undeniable shift. He no longer stayed as long as he used to, always seeming in a hurry, as if avoiding something he could not face. Kate, although she still held on to her confident demeanor, no longer seemed at ease. She no longer looked at me, nor did she speak to me directly, instead keeping her distance, as if afraid that anything she said would be questioned. During those days, I did not interfere much in their visits. I had already made everything clear. Now it was time for Max to choose his own path. Even though I could not control his decisions, I had done everything I could to protect myself, to protect this family. I could not allow everything to be driven by personal motives or someone else's pressure. I continued my work, the same work I had done for years, from repairing machines to managing the assets I had built. I did not need recognition or praise from anyone. Yet a part of me still felt lonely, as if I stood quietly in a corner, watching everything around me change without being able to do anything more. In the evenings, I still sat in this small room, looking out the window, watching the silent houses and the falling leaves. Life is not always easy, and I know I cannot change that, but I cannot let myself be dragged down. I have lived long enough to understand that there are things in life we must face alone. That day, when Max came to visit me alone, I sensed something different in the way he looked at me. He was no longer the innocent child I had once raised. He had grown, and that growth was not always comfortable. Max sat down, his eyes drifting across the paintings on the wall, things we had shared over the years. He remained silent for a long moment, then finally spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry," Max said, his voice soft but heavy with exhaustion. "I didn't understand everything you've done for me, everything you've been through." I did not respond right away. Hearing those words from my son stirred something deep within me. I did not want easy forgiveness, because I understood that change must come from true awareness, not from empty words. "You don't need to apologize, Max. I just want you to understand that everything I've done has been for you, for this family," I replied, my voice no longer tense, but softer now, as if I had accepted the truth and was ready for everything to be seen clearly. Max looked up, and his eyes were different. The confusion was gone, replaced by awareness, by an understanding I had never seen before. He gently placed his hand over mine, as if to say that everything was now clear. "Mom, I didn't know what to do back then. I got caught up in things I thought were good for you. But now I understand, and I see that what you did was right," Max said, and I saw something in his eyes, perhaps regret, perhaps growth. Those words felt like a small flame in the darkness. They could not change everything at once, but I felt something inside me begin to heal. I did not need him to admit everything. What mattered was that he had started to understand. "You've grown up, Max," I said, my voice warm but firm. "You're no longer a child. You can take control of your own life, but never forget that the values I taught you will always stay with you. You have to walk your own path, and I will always be here if you need me." Max nodded, saying nothing more. He stood up, but this time I did not feel the urgency in his steps. He turned to look at me one last time, then walked out the door without another word. I knew he did not need to say anything more. He understood. After the door closed, I sat down once again in my familiar chair, looking out the window. My life has not always been easy, but I have done what I needed to do. I have raised a child who has grown into someone capable of standing on his own, someone who can face the world. And in this moment, I felt as though a part of me had been returned. The pain of the past was now only a memory, a lesson, because in this life, nothing is meaningless if we can learn from it. Finally, I stood up, walked to my desk, and continued my work. My life will go on, and I will not allow myself to be pushed around by those who do not understand the value of silence, of patience, and of the respect I have built. As time passed, everything gradually settled into a different rhythm. Max still came to visit me, but not as often as before. He began rebuilding his life, as if trying to find himself again after the upheavals in the family. But I knew that even if he did not say it, everything that had happened remained deeply etched in his mind. The way Max looked at me had changed, not because he had lost his love, but because he had grown, because he had come to understand the importance of the values I had taught him. Kate, however, was different. She still remained in Max's life, but each time we met, I could clearly feel the distance from her. She no longer looked at me the way she did in the beginning, no more friendly smiles or pleasant words. Instead, she seemed guarded, as if everything around her had become uncertain. Even though I could not change how she felt, I knew that Kate was beginning to recognize the difference between us. I was not someone easily manipulated, and I was not willing to let anyone control my life so easily. One afternoon, Max came to visit me alone. I saw in his eyes a trace of confusion, something unfamiliar I had never seen before. He did not arrive with the usual warmth, but instead carried a heaviness in his gaze, as if there was a tension he could not express. I knew this was the moment I needed to listen. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything that happened," Max began, his voice low and hesitant. "I didn't know what to do when everything around me started changing. I made you feel that way, and I I don't want you to go through that anymore. A tightness rose in my chest, but I did not let my emotions take over. I had grown used to silence, to not allowing tangled feelings to cloud my thoughts. Max had said what needed to be said, but that did not mean everything would return to how it was. I needed him to understand that no matter how much pain we had gone through, nothing would truly change without facing the truth completely. Max, I understand how you feel, I said, my voice gentle but steady. You've grown up, and I cannot live your life for you. I can only be here and teach you what I know. But you have to understand that your decisions are yours. I cannot make them for you anymore. He sat in silence for a moment, as if reflecting on my words. Then he looked at me again, and the confusion in his eyes had faded, replaced by a clearer awareness. He gave a small nod, as if he finally understood that what I was saying was not just guidance, but also deep understanding and love. Mom, I can't fully express everything I've felt during this time, Max continued, his eyes seeming a little brighter. I got caught up in what I thought was Kate's protection, and I didn't realize that you were the one who had always been there for me. I'm sorry for not seeing that. I looked into my son's eyes and said nothing. There was pain in them, but not blame, only an awareness of what had happened. A part of me felt relieved because at last, he understood. But another part of me felt a quiet sadness, because I knew that even though Max had grown and learned an important lesson, the wounds of the past could not simply disappear overnight. Mom, I've disappointed you so much, and I don't know how to make it right, Max said, his voice growing softer, as if he were struggling within himself. You don't need to make anything right, Max, I replied, gently but firmly. I don't need redemption. I only need you to understand that sometimes we have to face the truth, even when it's the most painful thing. I just want you to realize that I have always trusted you, and I will continue to trust you, no matter what. Max fell silent for a moment, then finally stood up. This time, there was no rush in his movements, only a calm clarity. He did not turn back to look at me, but I knew he had begun walking the path he needed to take, a path without my interference or Kate's. I'll think more carefully, Mom, Max said as he stepped out the door. Thank you for always being there. When the door closed, I sat down again, looking into the empty space before me. Everything had become clearer. The hardships we had gone through were not meaningless. I had done everything I could to raise my son, and now he understood. Change does not come all at once, but I knew Max would make it. I did not need to change the world. I only needed to hold on to the values I had built. And in this world, silence, patience, and respect would always be the strength I choose to keep. In the time after that conversation, I could clearly feel a change in Max. He began spending more time with me, and although things could never fully return to how they were before, I could see that he had come to understand the value of family, of everything I had sacrificed for him over the years. His visits were no longer rushed, no longer hurried like before. Max started sharing more with me about his life, about thoughts he had never dared to express in the past. That feeling brought me a deep sense of relief. Even though everything could not change overnight, I knew he had begun to realize what truly mattered. Kate, although she no longer confronted me directly, still carried a presence that made the atmosphere in my family tense. She was no longer as confident and commanding as before. Each time she saw me, she seemed cautious, as if afraid I would expose truths she did not want to face. Still, I had no intention of making things more strained. I had done enough. There was nothing left to say between me and Kate. She continued trying to control everything around Max, but I could not help feeling that her control was no longer as effective as it once was. Deep down, I sensed a significant shift happening in their relationship. Even if it was not yet clear, I knew the truth could not remain hidden forever. One day, when Max came to visit me alone, I noticed an unusual wariness in his eyes. Even though he did not say it, I knew there was something unresolved within him. Max sat beside me, his gaze resting on the paintings and objects in the house, things we had shared over so many years. I did not want to pressure him, did not want him to feel burdened, but I knew he needed to speak what he had been holding inside. Mom, I feel like everything is going too far, Max began, his voice soft but filled with tension. I've tried to keep everything balanced, but it feels like I can't. You may not know this, but I feel like I'm stuck between two worlds. What do you want me to do, Mom? I really don't know anymore. His words struck me like a quiet shock, but I knew this was a truth he had buried for a long time. What I saw in his eyes was not fear, but exhaustion. Exhaustion from maintaining a facade no one could understand. Exhaustion from being pulled between choices he never wanted to make. As a mother, I understood that more than anyone. All I want is for you to be true to yourself, Max, I replied, my voice gentle yet firm. I cannot make decisions for you. You have to walk your own path, and I will be here to support you whenever you need. But you cannot keep living dependent on someone else, especially Kate. She may be your wife, but you must remember that you are the one responsible for your own life. Max sat still, his eyes wide as if trying to absorb my words. After a long moment, he finally spoke. Mom, I think I understand now. I didn't pay enough attention to you. I let everything happen without asking for your perspective. I'm sorry. I did not respond immediately. I simply looked at him for a long moment. It felt as though all the years, the painful moments, the silent tears I had shed had led to this very point. Max was no longer my little boy. He had grown, and although part of me wanted to hold him close, I understood that he needed to walk his own path. Max, you don't need to apologize, I said softly. You've grown up, and that's what I always hoped for. I just want you to understand that no one can live your life for you, not me, not anyone else. You have to take responsibility for your own life, and I will always be here if you need me. Max looked at me for a long time, as if searching for meaning in my words. Then he stood up, and in his eyes I saw a determination I had never seen before. Thank you, Mom, he said, his voice warm, lighter somehow, as if a part of him had begun to understand. When Max left, I sat down once again in my familiar chair. The sense of emptiness was still there, but this time it did not bring sadness. Instead, I felt relief. Life will never be easy, but I had done enough. I had taught Max the most important lesson: independence, self-reliance. No matter which path he chooses, he will know that his mother is always there, watching over him and supporting him, but never interfering too deeply in his life. My life continues. I keep doing the work I have always done, continuing to build the values I have held on to for so many years. Every day, I live with strength and resilience, not because I do not feel pain, but because I understand that everything I have is the result of what I have built from the very beginning, and I will never let go of those values. As time passed, and even though Max gradually returned to his own life, I could clearly feel that he was changing, not because of what I had said, but because of the challenges he had faced himself. I no longer saw him as a confused child, but as a man learning how to stand firm and make his own decisions. Our meetings no longer felt the same. There was no longer hesitation or awkwardness. He had begun to open up more, sharing with me his thoughts, the difficulties in his work, and sometimes even about his relationship with Kate. But one thing I knew for certain was that Max had grown, and he was learning to take control of his own life. As for Kate, not much had changed. She was still present in Max's life, still maintaining a distant and reserved attitude, but I could sense a certain uneasiness in the way she faced me. Although there were no more direct confrontations, I knew she still did not fully understand me. She had tried to keep everything under control, but I had shown her that my silence was not weakness, it was resolve. I did not need to speak much, nor did I need to prove anything. Sometimes, the truth only needs to be acknowledged, and everything will reveal itself in time. One afternoon, Max came to visit me. He was no longer in a hurry like before, but seemed at ease, no longer carrying that cold tension that once lingered in our conversations. This time, I did not need to search for comforting words. I knew Max had come to understand many things. He sat across from me, without worry, without urgency. There was only a quiet space between us, filled with understanding. Mom, I think I've come to understand a lot, Max began, his voice gentle yet firm. I didn't realize what you had been through, what you had built. I always thought I could do everything right, that I could handle everything in my own way. But I've realized I was wrong. His words made me sit in silence for a moment. Each word he spoke was not an apology, but an acknowledgement, a maturity I had long hoped to see. Max was no longer the boy I needed to protect. He had become a man who could recognize his mistakes and face them. I don't know how to say this properly, but I feel like I've been too focused on the wrong things. I didn't see what you've done for me, what you sacrificed to give me a better future, Max continued, his voice slightly trembling, as if these words had taken him a long time to find. I looked into his eyes and said nothing, letting the moment pass, allowing him to speak everything that had been weighing on him. I did not need to rush, did not need to respond immediately. He was doing exactly what I had hoped, standing on his own and reflecting on everything that had happened. Mom, I'm sorry for not seeing what you went through. I let myself be carried away by everything around me and forgot that you were the one who had always been there. I didn't give you the respect you deserved, Max said, his expression sincere. That feeling, the feeling of a child who had grown and begun to understand the value of a parent, stirred something deep inside me. But I did not allow myself to be overwhelmed. I had lived through enough to know that emotions are not the only thing that matters. What matters more is understanding, awareness, and the steady steps taken on one's own path. You don't need to apologize, Max. I just want you to understand that life is not always easy. Sometimes we have to face things we never wished for, but those are the very things that help us grow. I only want you to know that I have done everything I could to give you a better life, but you have to walk your own path, I said, my voice gentle yet resolute. Max did not respond immediately. He sat quietly, thinking about what I had said. Then finally he looked at me and said, I understand now, Mom. I won't let myself be carried away by things that don't matter anymore. I will try to do what's right, to live according to what I truly believe. Those words were not just regret, but awareness, a promise Max made to himself and to me. He was no longer lost. He had found his own path. I will do better, Mom, Max said, and this time, I saw in his eyes a confidence I had never seen before. A sense of relief washed over me once again. Things do not always turn out the way we expect, but I had done everything I could. And now I could be at peace knowing that Max would continue forward on his path, guided by the values I had taught him since he was a child. When Max left, I once again sat down in my familiar chair. A feeling of quiet satisfaction and peace slowly filled me. Life goes on, and there was nothing more I needed to do. I had done enough. After Max left, I sat in the quiet house, with only the ticking of the clock surrounding me. It felt as if everything around me had suddenly become more still than ever before. Yet within that silence, I felt a sense of peace I had never imagined I could have. Max had said the words I needed to hear, but not because I was waiting for an apology or an immediate change. I only wanted him to understand that the path he was walking would never be easy without awareness and growth. And I knew that after everything that had happened, Max had finally learned to stand on his own 2 feet. But I was not the only one who had learned an important lesson. The change within me had not been easy either. After so many years of devoting myself to raising Max, teaching him the values I had lived by, I now realized that I, too, had to relearn important lessons about life. I used to believe that silence was my only strength, but now I understand that silence only has value when it is chosen with intention. Silence is not passive acceptance. It is patience. It is the protection of one's values without the need to shout or argue. And I chose silence for so long not because I was weak, but because I understood that what I had built would speak for itself. Kate once believed she could control everything. She thought she could manipulate Max, could easily dominate every decision in this family. But I never allowed her to understand that true power is not something gained through sweet words or cleverness. True power lies in respect and in the ability to uphold the values you believe in, no matter how many challenges you face. And I knew that in the end, Kate would realize that I was not someone to be underestimated. In the days that followed, I continued my life with a calmness I had never known before. The work of repairing machines, the assets I had painstakingly built during difficult years, all of it went on. I did not need to prove to anyone who I was. What I had done already spoke for itself, and I felt at ease knowing that Max had finally understood that life is not always easy, but it becomes easier when you learn to stand up and face it. One day, while cleaning the house, I came across old family photographs. One of them was taken during a Christmas when Max was still a child, holding a small bracelet I had given him, a pure smile on his face. Back then, I never thought I would have to face so many challenges. But now, looking at that photo, I realized that everything happens for a reason. The hardships, the trials, all of it shaped me into who I am today. And I felt proud of that. Max called me that evening. His voice sounded lighter, no longer burdened with fatigue or worry. "Mom, I just want to say that I'm trying to change, to become better," Max said. "I can't fix everything immediately, but I will do my best. Thank you for always being here and for teaching me what truly matters." His words brought me a quiet kind of happiness, not because he apologized, nor because he admitted his mistakes, but because he had truly understood that growth does not come from having someone constantly protect you, but from standing on your own, taking responsibility, and living truthfully. "I will do better, Mom," Max continued. "I won't disappoint you anymore." I did not respond right away. I simply said softly, "I believe in you, Max. I will always be here, but you must walk your own path. That is how you grow. That is how you learn what truly matters." When the call ended, a deep sense of peace settled within me. It felt as though everything had reached its natural conclusion, not because I was giving up, but because I knew Max was ready to face the world on his own. And even though he might face many challenges ahead, I knew he would never truly be alone. I had done everything I could, and now all that remained was patience and the belief that one day Max would look back and feel proud of the choices he had made. Life will always go on, and I know that no matter what happens, I will always stand strong. My story may be just one among millions in this world, but it carries an important message. True strength does not come from power or control, but from patience, self-respect, and the courage to face the truth. No matter how life changes, we can always learn and grow from hardships and challenges. And I believe that if we hold firmly to our core values, we will always find the strength to overcome every storm. If this story has touched your heart, leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. Your words might help someone realize that in this life, no one has to face difficulties alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Keep living strong with faith and determination.